In the past 5 years, the term gaslighting has become popular when it comes to discussions of unhealthy relationship dynamics. The term originates from the 1938 play Gaslight, in which a man tries to convince his wife that she is mentally unwell so that he can continue to steal from her. His ultimate goal is to make her question her reality until she can't trust her own perception of events. The husband goes about this by dimming and brightening the indoor gas-powered lighting in the home every night, but when the change is brought up to him by his wife, he claims that the lighting is the same as it's always been. Every time she brings up how the lighting has changed, he convinces her that it hasn't, and that she is seeing things. Gaslighting in modern discussions is a reference to how a person can, like the husband in the story, try to manipulate the other party into distrusting their own experience and what they know to be true. Merriam-Webster has recently defined it as a psychological manipulation to make someone question their perception of reality, leading to a dependence on the perpetrator. For example, say you are in a heated discussion over something trivial with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and during that argument, they say something that cuts you to the core. This is something that they know you are insecure about, something you have personally opened up to them about, and something that you were sure they just said to hurt you. This moment sticks with you in the worst way, and when you eventually decide to pause the argument so you can both calm down, you cannot get this moment out of your head. You see each other the next day and go over your points, and while you want to move past the spat, because you both agree it was nothing to break up over, you tell them that they really hurt you when they said this one thing, but they state that they never said it. They tell you that they would never weaponize the information you gave them in confidence that way, and that they are hurt and offended that you would think that they would. They act wounded over the accusation, as if you truly have cut them to the bone. Tears flood from their eyes, and they tell you they aren't sure they can be in a relationship with someone who thinks so low of them. Your mind begins to race. You know what they did. You know that if anyone should be crying here, it's you, but they seem so hurt and aggrieved that you begin to question if maybe you imagined it. Did they actually say that thing? Were you so stressed that you misheard them? Had you been upset over nothing all night? As your mind races, they double down on their statement and begin to grab their things, saying once again that they can't be in a relationship with someone who clearly doesn't hold them in a high regard. Stressed, confused, and now feeling incredibly guilty, you beg them to stay, telling them that you were sorry, that you must have misheard, and you don't actually think they are capable of doing what they have done. By the end of it, the relationship is recovered, but now you cannot trust your own perception, and they have convinced you that theirs is the only insight you can believe. In today's case, we will be discussing a person who was so adept at this kind of manipulation, they believed they could convince the justice system that they were not guilty, and to some, she was successful. Welcome back to another episode of Dreading, or if this is your first time here, welcome. Today we are going to be covering the case of Ezra Mcandless, a person who attempted to reunite with her ex-boyfriend by doing the unimaginable. This video has been one of our most highly recommended topics throughout our time here on YouTube, and we thought, since we are currently in the holiday season, it was time to give the people what they've been asking for. This video would not be possible without the help of Rottieiver Investigations, which is one of the best channels for uploading high-quality trial and interrogation footage. Their videos on Chandler Halderson, and most notably, the videos going over the phone calls between Chandler and his ex-girlfriend Kat, are especially insightful pieces of evidence to show just how much of an effective liar Chandler was, as he was able to convince her for a short while that he was entirely innocent even when he was in prison. I'll leave a link to their channel in the description box down below, along with their PayPal and Cashapp links. I cannot recommend their channel enough. If you like our content, you will love theirs. As always, if there is a video you would like to see on this channel, or a case you would like to bring more attention to, let us know by leaving a comment down below or emailing us at dreading.official@gmail.com. As of now, we currently have over 3,000 unread case suggestions in our email, but we go through them daily and are constantly adding new cases to the list. This edit specifically is coming a little bit later in the editing process, so if my voice sounds a bit different, it's because of that. Originally, I was going to make this one video, going over the interrogation footage, the direct examination, and then the cross-examination. However, that would be over 10 hours long, with how much footage there is. Instead, I am splitting the video into parts that will be released over the span of this next month. All the videos will be put into a playlist for ease of viewing, and that playlist will be left in the description box down below. If you're watching this video at the time of upload, know that the next video will be out soon, or is already published via Patreon a bit early. If you are on Patreon, you will get these videos as soon as they are finished being edited. I apologize for any annoyance this may cause, but I live in a very remote part of the country, and to upload a video over 2 hours long would take all day with the internet we currently have. But, with all of that said, let us begin. Ezra Mcandless was born Monica Kay on October 6, 1997, in a small town in Wisconsin. From the moment she was born, Ezra's life was difficult, as her biological father wanted nothing to do with her, and her mother was just 14 years old. However, the pair made it work. When Ezra was just 4 years old, her mother's partner at the time, Joshane Carlin, would formally adopt Ezra and raise her as his own child. Though he and her mother would divorce less than 10 years later, he maintained an active presence in her life, supporting her throughout her endeavors and providing her a place to stay when she needed one. While in high school, Ezra would begin to question her gender identity, and for a time, preferred to be identified using male pronouns. She would eventually decide against this self-identification, instead determining she was more fluid in her gender expression. It was around this time she would decide to go by the name Ezra, as the name felt less gender-specific. She also changed her last name to Mcandless, to pay homage to Chris Mcandless, who has been the subject of countless documentaries, articles, television shows, and books. Most famously, Into the Wild. Ezra would state that she personally identified in how free-spirited Chris was, and his love of nature. Whenever any strife arose in her life, she would often state that the issue wasn't with her actions, but with society as a whole and how they viewed her. This would become a huge point of contention with those closest to her, as she was exceptionally skilled at arguing this point. On multiple occasions, she would deliberately and selfishly wrong someone, and then argue that their issue was rooted in something nefarious, and that she was the one being victimized. Ezra had done well in high school, but dropped out of college early on to pursue a more artistic lifestyle. She often spoke about living life like Chris Mcandless, going out into the wild and becoming one with nature, but her follow-through was lacking. At most, she would enjoy hiking and breaking into abandoned buildings to take photos for social media, in which she once again portrayed herself as a bohemian. Those who knew her during this time would describe her as an eccentric art enthusiast, whose main focus and goal was always to stand out. She was the type of person who could turn it on at the drop of a hat, and had no fear when it came to talking to anyone. She would often spark up conversation with anyone she saw, and was widely known in Eau Claire, even going so far as to paint her car with the image of a bird riding a bicycle. She was extremely enterprising as well, and often used her ability to talk to anyone to her advantage. Despite dropping out of college, she had been able to become close to one of her art teachers. It was through that relationship that Ezra was able to hang some of her art in a gallery, which is a high achievement. In her diaries, she spoke often about fitting into society, and how it felt like a trap to her. Ezra spoke of constantly searching for something deeper in life, some deep philosophical meaning to why she was alive and what she was meant for. She often wrote about being placed on Earth to have fun, and experiencing everything she possibly could before she died, regardless of the consequences. And it was in this mindset that she met Jason Mengel. In the summer of 2017, when Ezra met Jason Mengel, Jason was 13 years her senior, but they would both say they fell in love instantly. The pair had met each other at a local coffee shop, Racy's, that catered to all walks of life, most notably hipsters. Jason had been on his way home from work when his bike got a flat tire. He walked to the closed shop and asked to be let in. After he got his coffee, he sat down on a bench and sighed, annoyed that his mode of transportation had failed him. And immediately after his exhale, Ezra popped up on the other side of the bench, having been laid there secretly. The two quickly fell into a comfortable conversation regarding art, gender, and their lives, and talked for hours. Despite the coffee shop being closed around them, they spent nearly the whole night talking, and before they parted, they exchanged Instagram information. Jason thought the chance encounter would be just that, but within 2 weeks, the pair was officially dating. Jason would describe Ezra, at this time, being extremely adventurous and wild. She would push him to go outside of his comfort zone and try things he otherwise wouldn't. He described her as being a spark plug and bringing an unbridled amount of energy to his life. Things weren't such smooth sailing within the first few weeks of the relationship. Ezra would tell Jason that her home life was difficult and that her mother was causing her a lot of undue stress. She was pressuring Ezra into going back to school or getting a full-time job, and mixed with the stress of trying to sort her life out, Ezra felt uncomfortable living with her mother. After a few weeks of Ezra's complaints, Jason asked his roommate if it would be okay for Ezra to move in with them. The relationship was extremely new, but he already felt as if Ezra would be the person he could spend the rest of his life with, and he felt compelled to help her. His roommate tentatively agreed, and within the first month of the relationship, Ezra had moved in. At the time, she didn't have a job, so she wasn't expected to pay rent. But Jason and his roommate asked her simply to kick in as much as she could when she eventually found employment. A short time after moving into the apartment, Ezra began working in a seasonal, part-time position at Joann's Fabric, an offshoot of the Michael's Arts and Crafts store. Though she was working quite a bit at this time, Ezra didn't buy her own food or help with any household purchases as she said she would. Jason's roommate complained about this fact, but Jason took on the financial burden without complaint. Shortly thereafter, he was made aware of their large age gap. Jason would testify that early on in the relationship, he had been led to believe that Ezra was a bit older than she was. They never spoke about age in their initial conversations, but she would describe her time in high school as being something far behind her, despite the fact that she was only a few years out. It wouldn't be until she had moved in with him that he realized she was over 10 years his junior, and by that time, they were already committed to each other, or at the very least, he was committed to her. 3 months after beginning the relationship with Jason, Ezra would become pregnant. It was unknown if it was his child or not, but she alleged that it was, and he believed her at the time. Ezra made the decision to terminate the pregnancy without Jason's input, as he testified that he felt it wasn't his place to give any. After the abortion, their relationship changed, with Jason withdrawing from Ezra quite a bit. He began to have a hard time being intimate with his partner, and actively chose to sleep on the couch of the apartment. Ezra would try to get him to sleep in bed with her, but Jason would refuse, stating that while he still loved her and wanted to be with her, he was going through a hard time. Their relationship would become controlling, with Ezra often telling Jason that if he left to go hang out with his friends or do something without her, she would injure herself. If he went out without her, or hung out with people she didn't like, she would accuse him of talking badly about her and trying to leave her. As mentioned, Ezra was incredibly skilled at arguing, and would make Jason feel as if he were directly responsible for her mental well-being. Though he would tell her that he wasn't talking poorly about her, and that he had no intention of leaving her, and that all of his friends liked her just fine, she would continue to berate him until he ultimately relented. He slowly began to withdraw from his friends, isolating himself more and more until the only people in his life were people that Ezra directly approved of. In February of 2018, Jason was away on military assignment for 2 weeks when Ezra messaged him that she was moving out of the shared apartment. Her message seemingly came out of nowhere, as she hadn't vocalized any issues prior to him leaving or while he had been gone. But after she left, his roommate would state that he no longer wanted her there. Specifically, he took issue with how little she provided for herself and how entitled she had been to all of his things. When Ezra first moved out of the apartment, she would go between staying at her mother's and her adoptive father's home, but would tell Jason that staying there felt oppressive. Despite neither party telling her to pay rent or help with utilities, she would state that they put too much pressure on her to figure her life out and find full-time employment, and she felt constricted. In turn, Jason would pay for her to spend the night at local hotels, staying with her to give her some semblance of normalcy. And it was while staying at one of these hotels that Jason would be confronted with the fact that Ezra had been cheating on him with one of his best friends. John Hansen was one of Jason Mangel's best friends, and as such, came into contact with Ezra. Jason met John playing Dungeons & Dragons, and the two quickly hit it off. When Jason began dating Ezra, he would bring her to his D&D hangouts every week. However, after a few attempts to play the game herself, Ezra would eventually decide that it wasn't for her. But that alone wasn't enough. She wanted Jason to give up the live-action role-playing game altogether, deciding that the group he played with were bad people. Jason couldn't understand what had happened to lead Ezra to this conclusion. He would try to convince her that she was wrong, but she was dead set in her beliefs, partially because she had begun having an affair with Hansen. Their affair had started when Jason had left on military assignment. He had asked John to check in on his girlfriend, telling him that she tended to isolate herself when she was upset, and that he was worried about her mental well-being when he was away. Both parties had talked to him, letting him know when they were going to hang out, and nothing seemed amiss, but nearly the entire time they had been keen on keeping the secret from him. While staying at the hotel with Ezra, Jason discovered that Ezra had been cheating on him with his best friend. He had long suspected that Ezra wasn't being faithful, although he didn't think it was with Hansen. On various occasions, he had told Ezra that her touchy, flirty nature with other men had made him uncomfortable, and every time, she accused him of being controlling and toxic. But after finding the texts, he realized that he had been right the whole time, and the other people who were closest to him had lied to him for a considerable amount of time. The following are those texts. Hansen, nice. Ezra, it's stressful looking for places, so that would be nice to relive. Working out again, dose really make you want to fuck everything that's moving. Jesus Christ, lady. Might also be a predator. Hansen, a body in motion wants to stay in motion. Ezra, are you going to pound this anytime soon? Sorry I'm rude. Hansen, not this week. I have Warren. It's alright to be blunt. Just gotta be alright with it coming back your way. Ezra. Just let me know when I get my next in and out. Winky face. Also, hanging and doing art agin would be nice because you are more than a good dick. Oh, isn't that sweet? Oh, that should be nice. He's such a good kid. Hanson. Why, thank you. He is a good kid. I'm looking forward to spending some dad time with him. Ezra. That melts my heart. I'd love to paint with him sometime. The next day, she sends him this message. Ezra. Feeling like a snake today. What's wriggling in your mind? Hanson. I've been with Warren all day. My mind is pretty preoccupied. Ezra. That's understandable. Dad time. 2 days later, on Valentine's Day, she reaches out again and says, see something, say nothing, and drink to forget. Happy Valentine's. He replies, that's beautiful, Ezra. Happy Valentine's. She responds, I have a way with words. John. Ha 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 ha. When Jason found the texts between his best friend and his girlfriend, he was obviously shocked and hurt. He had spent the past 6 months with Ezra, called her his wife, and both would routinely tell each other how much they loved and cared for each other, and she had given no indication that anything was wrong. She had been entirely comfortable lying to his face, and he had been none the wiser. Jason would testify to the fact that the realization that Ezra had slept with his best friend made him feel as if he was losing his mind. He began to question his reality. He felt that he needed to prove to himself that the texts were real, and so he grabbed his phone and took pictures of the messages. His reaction is incredibly common when it comes to people who have experienced prolonged gaslighting. Ezra told Jason it wasn't what he thought, and after a few hours of discussion, told him that though the texts made it seem like she was willingly carrying on an affair with his best friend, the truth was much darker than that. She claimed that Hanson had sexually assaulted her. She claimed that on the night of the 4th, she had been hanging out with John and his roommate at their apartment when they started drinking. Ezra stated that sometime during the night, the men began to tease her about the fact that she wasn't able to keep up with her alcohol consumption. After being goaded on, Ezra drank to the point of throwing up, at which point John took her upstairs and laid her on his bed. She then told Jason that someone took her tights off for her, and then she blacked out, waking in the morning with the feeling that something was greatly wrong. John then took her back to the apartment she shared with Jason and assaulted her again on Jason's bed. Jason didn't know what to believe. He felt more confused than ever. The text messages showed a consensual relationship between Ezra and John that seemed to be led by Ezra, but as she sat next to him, begging him to believe her, he felt conflicted. He called John directly and asked if he had sex with Ezra, which he denied. It was only after being told that he had seen the texts that John eventually copped to the encounter, saying that the two had had consensual sex a couple of times. John's initial denial only served to confuse Jason more. Not knowing how to move forward, Jason spoke to his friend, Josh, about the ordeal. He was mainly concerned with how to properly move forward in a way that would support Ezra, and Josh told him that if what she was saying was true, they needed to contact law enforcement. Ezra seemed opposed to this, stating that so much time had passed that there would be no evidence that what she was saying was true. In response, Jason told her even if the police didn't believe her version of events, she would be putting a potentially dangerous man on police radar and protecting other women from being hurt the same way she was. Even if nothing came of the report, if another woman came forward, this could help her. And so, Ezra went into the police station to be interviewed. Before we go over the footage of the interview, what's important to note about Ezra's claim is that it's false. And we know that it's false because Ezra had told multiple people that she had slept with John, and that the sex had been consensual.
During your friendship with the defendant, did she mention a person named John Hanson?
Yes.
And what did she tell you about John Hanson?
Objection, irrelevant. Overruled.
Andrea, could you be more specific? We were all friends with John. So.
Okay. Was there a time where the defendant discussed spending a few days consecutively with Mr. Hanson?
That is correct.
And what did she tell you about that?
She told me that she had stayed there for the weekend and that she had participated in spending time with John and his son, and that they had made dinner together and things of that nature.
And did she appear upset?
Absolutely not.
Was there anything negative stated by the defendant regarding that few-day stay with Mr. Hansen?
No, she seemed excited.
Did the defendant talk to you about John Hansen?
Yes.
And did she talk to you about spending time with John Hansen when Mr. Mingle was gone for a weekend?
Yes.
What did she tell you about that?
She told me that her and John hung out for a weekend, and she drank a lot of wine, and he helped her hold her hair up while she threw up and was just there for her, and she told me she had a really good time.
Although later she stated that she regretted it. The texts between the two also painted her as the pursuer in the sexual relationship, rather than a person who had been taken advantage of. She also refused to give the text messages between herself and John to the police. She claimed that she had deleted all remnants of their interactions because it had become too triggering for her to see. But when the investigators asked Hansen for the messages, he willingly turned them over, and they showed that Ezra had repeatedly told him that she enjoyed having sex with him and that she couldn't wait to do it again. The police also found more texts that depicted that Ezra and John had a sort of BDSM relationship and would send each other sexually explicit photos often. At no point did the police find any evidence that this relationship was not consensual, or that John was ever not respectful of Ezra's boundaries. She made the claim that John had sexually abused her in a state of panic when she realized that Jason had found the direct evidence of her wrongdoing, evidence that she couldn't make go away. She viewed the lie as the only way out of a bad situation that would keep her relationship intact, and that was more important to her than John's reputation. Ezra had no way of knowing that Jason would want her to speak to the police when she initially lied, and it would seem that she couldn't think of an argument that would make her not wanting to make a report make sense. The moment that Ezra decided that she would go ahead and make the formal report, she decided that her relationship and Jason's opinion of her was more important than John's life. She was okay with condemning an innocent person to an unearned prison sentence in order to maintain her lifestyle. And if it hadn't been for her friends telling the police that she was lying, it's possible he would be in prison today. It's important that we clarify that this rape allegation is patently false up front, as it completely changes how we view Ezra going forward. As we watch the interview, remember that everything she is saying is a fabrication, one in which she is knowingly destroying the life of a friend.
Sitting in that chair quickly, and I'll move up the rest of the chairs that way.
Pausing immediately, we should also go over what she is wearing, because, like Sherry Papini, she is a gifted liar who went into this interview knowing that she would have to try and convince the police of her innocence. One of the only things that we can make out off the bat is a large, oversized, long-sleeved t-shirt that seems to swallow her whole. She is swimming in it, and immediately after sitting down, she is crouched over, holding her body as if she is comforting herself. All of this is done in an effort to make herself seem as small as possible, someone fragile and innocent who couldn't possibly hurt anyone. This is deliberate staging on her part.
If you need anything, water or a snack, I'll try. I'll do anything for you, okay? Alright, so
Pausing once more, but she is already crying. Again, the assault didn't happen. Her version of events was discredited by her own friends who had nothing to gain by lying. And yet, when put in this high-pressure environment, she is able to feign tears successfully. It's only been 24 seconds, but she's already done this much.
Mark, if you'll clear this department, before we begin, like I said, you're free to leave anytime you want. You can stop talking whenever you want. This door is only closed for our privacy. You can leave anytime you want, okay? Just let me know that ahead of time. How do you spell your first name?
Ezra.
What's your middle initial?
J.
And how do you spell your last name, miss?
Mcandless.
Josh called us. Obviously, he was concerned about your safety and Jason's safety. He was concerned that if he felt like he hadn't slept or hadn't eaten in days, and he didn't know if he was tired from that or if he was exhausted from that. So those are first concerns. We shouldn't be okay physically. If you guys are he also mentioned that Jason's upset about something that happened to you that hasn't been reported yet. Okay. Again, if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. If you do, that's fine too.
That's what I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Ezra cries and states that she wants to talk about what happened here. Of course, lying about being assaulted is horrific, but she was given an out here to not file a false report. She was given the opportunity not to lie about one of the worst things that could happen to a person to the police and hurt the credibility of sexual assault survivors. And instead, she actively chooses to do the opposite and move forward with the interview.
So we'll start with whatever you're comfortable with as far as you told me that it happened here in Eau Claire, correct? You know where?
It happened at, the first thing that happened was at Jason's house, and the second thing that happened was at John's house.
This is the opposite of what she told Jason.
Okay. We'll go with, what happened at Jason's house?
At Jason's house, John grabbed me by the throat twice.
Okay. Any reason why he did that?
It's because he liked him.
He likes to do that? Like, is that like a fetish of his, or?
I think so.
Okay.
According to those who knew John, including Jason, Jason would often grab people by the throat to show them how to get out of possessive holds. Jason testified that John did this type of thing so often that when he saw John do this to Ezra once, prior at their apartment, he thought nothing of it. It was sort of like John's party trick, and Ezra had never seemed uncomfortable with this.
Was there any kind of warning sign that, like, did you do something? Did you say something? Did he do something? Did someone else say something that?
I was sitting on the counter after I made some coffee, and I was talking to him, and he just grabbed me by the throat and didn't know what to think or what to say.
Okay.
And then the second time I got off the counter and he put me in a headlock and he held it there. And it really made me very uncomfortable.
Some questions I may ask you, and they sound really redundant, very obvious, but these are questions that I have to ask just to get more, clarity as far as, for example, like you mentioned that he grabs you in the throat. Did he use a right hand or left hand or both hands?
It was his right hand.
When he grabbed you with the right hand, did he squeeze your throat, or did he just put his hand around your throat?
Squeezed my throat forcibly.
Okay. Did that cause you to have any trouble breathing?
Yes.
Okay. Did you lose consciousness at all? Did you black out?
I felt really lightheaded after the second time he grabbed me.
That was the headlock, correct? Okay. Did you see any kind of little fuzzy, shiny things floating around when that happens? Have you ever had that experience before where you shortness of breath or you get a wind knocked out and you also see like little glittering things floating around? Okay, so, but that didn't happen though. Okay.
I just coughed a lot.
Okay. Does your throat still hurt now? Okay. When he had his right hand on your throat, how did you get away from that grab?
And he just sat there and he let go.
Okay. Were you hitting his hand at all? Were you telling him to stop? Were you telling him no?
I just was quiet. I just grabbed his hand.
Okay.
I grabbed his wrist. It's like 6 foot something. Really big.
Okay. How long was there between when you were sitting at the counter and he grabbed you by the throat and then he let go? How long after that did he put you in a headlock after you walked away from the counter?
Almost suddenly.
Okay.
Instantly.
When he had you in the headlock, was his left hand arm around you, or was his right arm around you?
That was right.
Okay. If there's anything that you don't know, that's fine too.
I don't remember.
If there's anything that you don't want to answer, or if you just want to take a few minutes and breaks and just kind of take your time, that's fine with me too, okay? If there's any questions that you don't feel comfortable with me asking, that's fine too. So don't be afraid to say, like, I'm not comfortable answering that, or I don't want to talk about that, that's fine. It doesn't mean that you don't care, it doesn't mean that this isn't real, it's just take your time. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to rush you. If it feels like I am, just tell me, okay? When he had you in a headlock, did you also have trouble breathing?
That's what made me cough.
Okay. When he had you in a headlock, again, how did you have to fight him off? Did he let go eventually?
He put my arm up and he let go.
Okay. Was there anyone there when this happened? Okay. And you mentioned a counter at Josh's place. Is the kitchen?
Jason's place.
Jason's place. Okay.
It was the kitchen.
Okay. Does Jason live here? Okay. So after he grabbed the throat with his right hand and the headlock, and he let you go after the headlock, what happened after that?
I just went and I sat down and then he acted like everything was normal.
Okay. Did he say anything to you? Did he apologize?
He didn't say sorry.
Okay. Did he say anything else? Did he say anything else to you during that time after you sat down?
I can't remember what he said to me at the time.
Okay. Now, when I say this, I'm not trying to accuse you or anything, but what was the purpose of you being at Jason's place that night?
I was dating Jason.
I'm sorry?
Jason was my boyfriend.
Okay, so you and Jason are dating. Okay. That I did not know, so I just want to kind of clarify, that makes a lot of sense why you were there. Why was John there?
Because John was one of Jason's friends, and he was my friend, and he came over because Jason was gone, and he wanted to just hang out and do art with me.
Okay. So Jason was at home then during this time, okay. Were you at Jason's house the entire time? Okay. What time were you there, or what day did you get to Jason's place?
I can't remember what day, but it was in the afternoon.
Okay. And when did this happen?
I think it's been a week.
Okay. Do you know the estimate time, day?
Around noon, I think.
So after you sat down and John acted like everything was okay, what happened after that?
Jason came home and John got up and he left.
Okay. How long was it when you sat down until Jason got home?
It wasn't very long. He got home shortly.
Did you tell Jason what happened?
I told him everything tonight.
Okay. But at that time when it happened, you didn't tell him? Okay.
That's what he's so upset tonight.
Was there a reason you didn't tell Jason what happened that night or that day afternoon?
Because I was really ashamed and I was really afraid.
When this incident happened, did John touch anywhere else or you didn't get permission to? Did he do anything else to you? Did he...
I don't know.
Okay. So as far as you know is he just grabbed you by the throat and then put you in a headlock. And each one caused you to have trouble breathing, cough. But you did not black out, lose consciousness. Okay. So after John left and Jason came home, John left. The second incident happened, that was at Josh's place?
It was at John's house.
John's house. When did that take place? Was that the next day, the same day?
It was, I think it was a couple days later when Jason had to leave for drill because he's in the army.
Okay.
And John wanted me to come over to his house to talk about everything and talk about stuff. And he bought wine and things. And I thought it would be okay to have some wine and just try to talk and try to understand what was going on. And then I got really, really, really drunk. And I was almost blackout drunk. And I was throwing up. And he had me go upstairs when I started throwing up. And he took me upstairs. And he put me in his bed. And I was throwing up. I just remember a lot of, I don't know, it's a big mess of a bunch of fumbling and stuff. And it was awful.
When you were in John's room, was the light on, light off?
It was awful.
Now when you say fumbling around, was it like someone on top of you, someone laying next to you? Were you...
It was on top of me.
Did you for sure know it was John, or that it was just someone on top of you?
It was John.
Okay. When you felt this, what happened next?
It's really hard to remember because of how drunk that I got.
Okay.
I just remember throwing up a lot, and I remember he was on top of me, but then I was too drunk, and like things weren't, I don't know if things weren't working for him or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I fell asleep.
Again, to be clear, this didn't happen, but in this dialogue with the officer, where he is being incredibly kind and considerate, she begins to add details to her story. She told Jason that when she woke up the next morning, she didn't remember what had happened, but she knew something was wrong. But here in the interview, she is saying that John had tried to rape her, but because of the alcohol he consumed, he was unable to. She is comfortable enough in her deception that she is adding supplemental details.
I just didn't think it was right. It messed me up really bad.
Okay. Did you think or believe or know Was there any kind of sexual intercourse that happened that night?
I think so, but he's telling everybody that there wasn't.
To be clear, when John was confronted about sleeping with Ezra by Jason, he lied and said he hadn't done it because sleeping with your best friend's significant other is a shitty thing to do. He didn't want to be outed as the kind of person who would betray one of the closest people to him in that way. So he lied to save face. When Jason told John he had seen their text messages and he knew he had slept with Ezra, he admitted it. Then when the accusation morphed into "you had sex with my girlfriend" to "you raped my girlfriend," he once again denied wrongdoing, stating that he did nothing with Ezra that was unconsensual, and she was lying. The only time he had lied about having sex with her was when he tried to lie to Jason.
And that's why Josh is being very protective of it. And it hurts really bad because I just want somebody to believe me.
Knowing that she is lying, knowing that John hadn't assaulted her, and she is actively choosing to make a false police report, this line is haunting. Ezra is an incredibly skilled manipulator, because any person with a heart would hear something like this and see her, hunched over and crying, and want to protect her. It's human nature to want to protect someone like this, to provide them comfort and kindness, and to reply to this assertion with, "Of course we believe you." It's only with the knowledge that we have in hindsight, the direct evidence that shows what she is saying had never happened, that we can see this for what it really is: manipulation.
Or do you have any pain down there? Any soreness, any redness that you know of?
No,
Okay.
there's no reason to use any protection.
Okay. No protection? Did you fight, scratch, kick, or anything like that that you remember of?
No,
Did you say try to get off? No? Or did you try to he hold you down by force? Or do you remember anything like that?
I don't remember much of that night.
So after you fell asleep and you woke up, do you know where you were when you woke up? Where were you?
I was in John's bed.
Do you remember having any clothes on? Blankets, cover sheets, anything like that?
I had blankets on, but I didn't have my tights on or my socks.
Were you wearing underwear that night? No.
I didn't have any on.
Oh, you didn't have any on either? Okay. Did you have a shirt on or like a tank top, or what did you have on top?
I still had a dress on.
Were you able to find those clothes that belonged to you? Where were they located at?
They were on the floor and just kind of scattered.
Where was John when you woke up?
He was in the bed.
Was he laying next to you on a different bed, or?
He was laying next to me. He woke up and he told me to get out of his bed and go lay in the other bed so that his roommate wouldn't think anything.
Was the other bed in a separate room or same room?
In a separate room. He told me he didn't want his roommate to think anything.
There's a popular idiom that goes, "Every lie has a kernel of truth," and I think this could be the kernel in this particular fib. We already know that John and Ezra had sex, and when turning their affair into a case of sexual assault, all Ezra had to do was adapt the true story of their hookup into a story of sexual exploitation. It's likely that some of the night they slept together was spent hanging out with his roommate, and it's also likely that at some point she went and slept on the other bed in the home to make it appear as if they hadn't slept together, which was witnessed by John's roommate. Knowing this, she is making sure she can account for what the roommate could tell the police that might make her look guilty. If his roommate spoke to the police and said when she slept over on this particular night, she spent the night in their guest room and he saw her sleeping there early in the morning, she would already have told them that fact, making his testimony ineffective.
Did you go to the other bed, or where did you go after that?
I went to the other bed and I just laid there until the morning.
When you woke up, was it still nighttime? Was it the next day already?
It was the next day.
Okay. When you went to, do you remember what time you went to John's house?
I don't remember. I think it was after he got done with work, so around 7
PM, AM?
p.m.
Okay. When you woke up, you know what time it was?
It was really early. It was like at 5 or 6 in the morning.
Okay. So you went to the other room around 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. But you went in there, you just laid there, correct? You said you laid it the next morning, or?
I laid there until he got up, and then so he could take me home.
Okay, do you know what time that was?
I think that was around 10 or 11.
Okay, and John took you home?
It was the thing Jason's most upset about is what happened at Jason's house after he took me home.
Okay. He took you all the way back home to Stanley, correct? Or where
To Jason's house.
Jason's house? Okay. Did they happen on a ride home from John's place to Jason's place?
It happened at Jason's place.
Okay. Nothing happened in the car though. Oh, okay. So after John woke up and took you to Jason's place, what happened then?
I got there and I thought Alex, our roommate, would be there, but he was at work.
Mm-hmm.
And I got there and he told me to go upstairs to Jason's room because he wanted to do stuff to me on Jason's bed. Because that's what he wanted, because he told me that that's what gets him off. And he took me upstairs and he told me to take my clothes off. And so I did, because that's what I thought I had to do, because I thought I was a piece of garbage for going over to his house. I would never want to do that.
Pausing here for a moment, when we went over the case details and watched the trial footage, particularly that of Jason Mangle, there were times when he would still question on the stand how much of what she said was true and how much was false. He would be talking about situations where, from an outside perspective, it's very clear that she was lying to him, and he wouldn't be sure if that was the case. And this is why. Again, it's only with the knowledge that there is direct, concrete evidence that what she is saying is a lie that we can confidently say that she is acting in this moment. The sexual encounters she had with John were consensual, but in this moment, she is incredibly believable. Now imagine what Jason must have gone through in a relationship with her. She would tell him if he were to leave the apartment and go play D&D with his friends, if he were to do anything that she doesn't like, she would hurt herself. When he stated that he believed some of her friendships with men were inappropriately flirtatious and seemed romantic, she would convince him that he was being controlling and too demanding of her, and the argument would end in him apologizing, and so on. The damage that she was able to inflict on people through her words alone is not inconsequential.
Be right back, okay? I'm using tissue.
Does right now.
Can't find a trash can, so I'll just use it on the table. Are you okay to go on? Okay.
Could you find out soon if Jason can come here?
Yeah, I can call my partner and see where they're at. I don't know if they're still talking or not, so I will call him shortly and see if he can come here, okay? Last we left off, he told me that John brought you back to Jason's place. And he told you to go upstairs because he gets off of that. When you say, he gets off on it, what do you mean by what happened up in Jason's bed?
He had me take my clothes off and I let him use me. I regret it so much. I didn't want that to happen. So wrong.
Again, I'm not trying to say this to make you relive what happened, but when you say used me, what do you mean by that?
He had me perform oral on him and then he did things to me with himself from behind. And he didn't use protection again, even though he should have. I wish he would have. He was like, nothing.
When you say the things behind, do you mean like sexual intercourse? Okay. Did you know if he used his penis or did he use an object or his hand?
He used his feelings.
You mentioned earlier that you said you felt that you had to do this because of what happened prior to this, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know if you mentioned that he didn't use protection either time when it happened at his place and again at Jason's place? Do you know if he ejaculated inside of you or?
I couldn't afford Plan B the next day, and that's what I wanted to do.
I'm sorry?
I wanted to take Plan B the next day, but I couldn't afford it. I was so upset.
Headquarters, William 159, copy
Jason's room.
After that, I just went and got coffee. And I was at the apartment and I was really upset.
You got coffee at a store or
At Macy's,
where's that at?
that's on Water Street.
Okay. Racy's? You know how to spell that?
R-A, I think C-Y-S.
Is that
It's by the pickle.
okay? So that's like the side viewing the window, viewing the river, correct? Okay. Okay, so you went and got coffee there. What did you do, or where did you go?
I don't really even remember. It's like I shut down. I went on autopilot.
Did he come back to Jason's place, or did he go somewhere else?
Somewhere else.
Okay, so he went somewhere else.
I can remember now what he said the night at his house.
What did he say?
When he was on top of me, he just kept telling me to be quiet and kept calling me a little girl. That was so weird to me. And I told Jason about it and it made him really upset. And I really vividly remember it. I didn't like that. Can you see Jason's phone?
That's where the footage ends. As mentioned, the police began their investigation into the claims made against John Henson in earnest, but the vast majority of the evidence in the case pointed to the sexual relationship not only being consensual, but being established and spurred on by Ezra more so than John. Shortly thereafter, the case was closed after one of the people closest to Ezra came forward and informed the police that Ezra had stated she had consensually had sex with John and only came to regret it after Jason had found out. That person was Alex Woodworth, a man who was also engaging in a long-term affair with Ezra, and shortly thereafter, she would murder him.
Did you also learn that there was a potential sexual assault investigation pertaining to the defendant and John Hansen?
Yes.
No foundation.
Overall, I think this sounds like a foundational question.
Were you aware that the defendant and John Hansen had some sort of relations?
Objection, no foundation. This witness does not have a foundation to testify.
Well,
Her awareness is not based upon personal knowledge. It is based upon gossip or hearsay.
all right, well, I guess let's start that way. Let's go back, foundation, any person.
And I can move on. Did you ask Alex something about the defendant and her relationship with John Hansen?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
That's her statement. So what did you say to Alex regarding a sexual assault investigation?
Objection, hearsay, irrelevant.
Well, so you're saying it's what did this witness say
Yes.
to
What
Alex?
did you say to Alex? It's her statement to Alex.
Well, all right, I'm going to overrule. I'm going to allow you to answer the question.
I was aware that there was an accusation between the defendant.
Move to strike, no foundation.
Okay, well, I'm going to strike the beginning of that answer, but if you would just answer the question. What did you say to Alex without any background or explanation? What did you say to him?
I said, do you think she's going to also accuse you of sexual assault?
And how was Alex's demeanor when you made that statement?
He said he didn't know, but he wasn't worried about it because he had months worth of text messages to prove that it was a consensual relationship.